The morning I walked into that courthouse, I told myself I was ready. 63 years old, and I still had to remind myself to breathe like a person who wasn't drowning. My daughter had driven me. She kept stealing glances at me from the driver's seat, the way children do when they're worried about their mothers but don't know how to say it out loud. I told her I was fine. I told her this was just paperwork. I told her that signing a piece of paper doesn't mean anything breaks. I lied to her on all 3 counts. My husband of 31 years, was already inside the building when we arrived. I saw his car in the lot, that silver Lexus I used to think was too flashy for a man his age. Now I just thought it looked exactly like him. Expensive on the outside, empty where it counts. His name was Gerald, and for 3 decades, I had loved him the way you love something you built with your own hands, imperfectly, protectively, and with the constant low terror that it might one day fall apart. It had fallen apart. I won't spend too long on the why, because honestly, the why is the same story it always is. A younger woman, a second phone, a separate savings account I wasn't supposed to find. And then, when I did find it, a Gerald who looked at me across our kitchen table and said, "I think we've both known for a long time that this wasn't working." 31 years, 4 addresses, 2 kids, 1 grandchild on the way. This wasn't working, so there I was, standing outside the Harlan County Courthouse on a Tuesday morning in October, my good wool coat buttoned to the top because the cold had come early that year, and my daughter was squeezing my hand, and I was smiling at her like I was completely fine. Inside, my attorney, a practical young woman named Dana, who wore the same pearl earrings every time I saw her, had already told me what to expect. We would go before the mediator. Gerald's side would present the settlement terms they'd drawn up. I would review, and if everything matched what we'd agreed to in principle, I would sign. It was supposed to be the quiet, dignified ending to a loud and undignified year. Dana had the folder ready when I sat down. She slid it across the table and said, "Take your time, Helen. Read everything. Don't let anyone rush you." And then Gerald's attorney, a man named Bosworth who had the handshake of someone who'd practiced it in a mirror, said, Of course. Although we do have a time window with the mediator, so if we could..." She said, "Take your time," my daughter said from beside me, sharp as glass. That's my girl. I opened the folder. I am not a lawyer. I want to be clear about that. But I am a retired high school English teacher who spent 35 years making 17-year-olds read things carefully, and I can follow language when I put my mind to it. Something on page 4 stopped me. It was a clause buried in the middle of a paragraph about asset distribution. And it used the phrase primary residential rights in a way that didn't match anything Dana and I had discussed. We had agreed that the house would be sold and the proceeds split. That was the agreement. That was what I had prepared myself for. But this clause seemed to say something different. It seemed to say that Gerald retained the right to remain in the property for up to 18 months post-signature while the sale was pending his approval. His approval. I read it again. "Dana," I said quietly. She leaned over. I watched her eyes move across the page. A small line appeared between her brows. Bosworth cleared his throat. "Is there a question? That's a fairly standard language for..." "That is not what we agreed to," Dana said. It reflects the updated terms as of last Thursday. I was not informed of any updated terms. I stopped listening to them argue. Because something had shifted in my chest. Not panic exactly, but a kind of cold alertness. Like when you're driving at night and your headlights catch something at the edge of the road and you don't know yet if it's an animal or a person or just a shadow, but your foot is already moving toward the brake. I set the folder down. I folded my hands on top of it. And I thought, something is wrong here, and I don't know the full shape of it yet. The mediator called a 30-minute recess. Gerald's side filed out of the room. My daughter went to find coffee. Dana made phone calls in the hallway, her voice low and tense. I needed air, so I walked to the end of the corridor and stood near a window that overlooked the courthouse's side courtyard. Just a concrete square with a few benches and a maple tree dropping its last red leaves. There was a woman sitting on one of the benches. She was older than me by at least a decade. Maybe 75, maybe more. She had the kind of face that had once been very beautiful and had aged into something better. All character, equal lines earned honestly. She wore a navy coat and had a paper coffee cup balanced on her knee, and she was watching the maple tree the way people watch things when they're not really seeing them. I don't know why I went outside. I think I just needed to be somewhere that wasn't that room. I sat on the bench at the other end from her. The cold felt good. I tipped my face up toward the pale October sky. "First time?" the woman asked. I looked at her. She nodded toward the courthouse. "In there. Looks like your first time dealing with something like this. Is it that obvious?" "You have the look," she said. Not unkindly. "Like you still believe the paperwork is just paperwork." I laughed before I could stop myself. "It's not?" She turned to look at me fully then. Her eyes were light gray, very clear. "Depends on who drew up the paperwork," she said. "And why?" She introduced herself as Ruth. She didn't offer a last name, and I didn't ask. She said she came to the courthouse every Tuesday. Her late husband had been a clerk here for 40 years, and she found it comforting, the building, the routine. She said it with a small smile that told me the explanation was true, but not complete. I told her my name. I told her I was here to finalize a divorce settlement. I told her about the clause on page 4. I don't know why I told a stranger all of this. Maybe because she was a stranger. Maybe because she was the only person in that courtyard who wasn't depending on me to be fine. Ruth listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "What does your attorney say?" she asked. "She's on the phone trying to find out when the terms were changed." "And the change was made last Thursday?" "That's what his attorney said." Ruth set her coffee cup down on the bench beside her. She laced her fingers together in her lap. "Do you have any idea what Gerald did last Thursday?" I opened my mouth. Then I closed it. Because I did know. Dana had mentioned it, in passing, 2 weeks ago. Gerald had filed something, some supplementary documentation about a rental property we owned to tender in Clarksville. I hadn't paid it much attention because Dana said it was routine. "He filed paperwork about a rental property," I said slowly. Ruth nodded, just slightly. "And did you ever see that filing?" I hadn't. Dana had handled it. "Helen," Ruth said, and my name in her mouth was careful and deliberate. "The way you'd carry something fragile. I'm going to say something, and I want you to hear it as someone who has no reason to help you, except that I was sitting on this bench and you sat down next to me, and I'm too old to watch something happen that I could have prevented." I looked at her. "Don't sign anything today," she said. "Not until your attorney has compared every page of what they gave you this morning against the original agreed terms, word by word. Not just the clause you found, every page." "You think there's more?" "I think," she said carefully, "that a man who changes terms 3 days before signing day without notifying opposing counsel is a man who is hoping someone doesn't read carefully enough." The cold settled in around us. A leaf came down from the maple and landed between our feet. "How do you know about things like this?" I said. She looked at the tree again. "I was married to a man like Gerald," she said. "A long time ago, before I knew what I was looking at." She stood up then, slowly, with the careful deliberateness of someone who'd learned not to rush her body. She picked up her coffee. She looked at me one more time. "Read every page," she said. "And if something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust that. You've had 60-something years of learning when something is wrong. Use it." She walked back inside the courthouse. I sat there for another minute. The maple tree let go of another leaf. Then I stood up and went to find Dana. "I need you to pull up the original settlement document," I said when I found her. "The version we agreed to 6 weeks ago. I need you to compare it to what they handed us this morning. Every page." Dana looked at me, then something in her expression shifted, like she'd been waiting for me to say this, like she'd been hoping I would. "I had the same feeling," she said quietly. We took the documents to a small conference room down the hall. Dana spread both versions across the table, and we went through them together. I had taught literature for 35 years. I know how to read for what's there, and for what isn't. We found 4 additional changes, the clause on page 4 that I'd already spotted, and 3 others, smaller, sneakier. One of them was a single sentence about the Clarksville rental. It now included language that would allow Gerald to refinance the property within the settlement period, which our original agreement had explicitly prohibited. Another changed the timeline for liquidating a joint investment account from 90 days to 180, long enough, Dana explained, for certain market positions to expire. The last one was the one that made my hands go still on the table. It was in the section about my pension. The original language said my full pension, accumulated over 35 years of teaching, was my sole property and excluded from division. The new version had one additional clause, 4 lines. It said that in the event I remarried within 5 years of the settlement date, a portion of the pension equivalent to Gerald's contributory interest would revert to him. Gerald had not contributed to my pension, not a single dollar. He had contributed to his own, separately, through his accounting firm. Contributory interest was a phrase someone had invented, someone who was hoping I wouldn't notice. "He was going to let me sign this," I said. Dana didn't answer because there was nothing to say. He was going to sit across that table and watch me sign this, and he knew what was in it. "Helen, 31 years, I said, and my voice came out steady, which surprised me. He looked me in the eye this morning in that hallway, and he asked me how our granddaughter's name was going to be spelled. He asked me that, and he knew what was in this document. I thought about Gerald's silver Lexus in the parking lot. I thought about Bosworth's practiced handshake. I thought about the phrase, updated terms as of last Thursday, delivered so smoothly, so reasonably, as if it were simply an administrative matter. I thought about a woman sitting on a bench outside, in the cold, watching a maple tree. Dana requested an immediate meeting with the mediator. We presented both documents side by side. We highlighted every discrepancy. Bosworth tried at first to characterize the changes as clarifications, standard language updates that didn't materially alter the agreement. Dana dismantled that argument with the patience and precision of someone who had been doing this for 15 years and had no interest in being lied to today. Gerald sat across from me during all of this. I want to tell you that he looked ashamed. I want to tell you he couldn't meet my eyes, but Gerald had always been composed under pressure. It was one of the things I'd once admired about him. He sat with his hands folded on the table and his face arranged in an expression of mild concern, like a man watching someone else's minor problem. At one point he said, "Helen, I think there may have been a miscommunication between the attorneys." I looked at him. I looked at him the way you look at someone when you are 63 years old and you are very, very tired of being managed. "Gerald," I said, "I taught English for 35 years. I know what words mean." He didn't say anything after that. The mediator suspended the session. She noted the discrepancies formally in the record. She gave both parties 10 days to reconcile the documents and return with language that matched the original agreed terms. As Bosworth gathered his papers, I heard him murmur something to Gerald. Gerald shook his head, just slightly. Then he stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out of the room without looking at me. His shoes made the same sound on the courthouse floor they always had. I used to find that sound comforting. Hearing him come down the hallway at the end of the day. The same rhythm, dependable. Home. It didn't sound like home anymore. It just sounded like footsteps. My daughter was waiting for me in the lobby. She read my face before I could say a word. "What happened?" "We didn't sign today," I said. "Mom." "It's okay," I told her. And for the first time that day, I wasn't lying. There were problems with the documents. Dana caught them. "We're going to gotta fix it." She searched my face. "Are you okay?" I thought about that for a moment. I thought about page 4 and the maple tree and a woman named Ruth who came to this courthouse every Tuesday because her late husband had worked here and she found it comforting. I thought about how she'd looked at me with those clear gray eyes and said, "You've had 60-something years of learning when something is wrong. Use it." "I will be," I said. We walked out through the courthouse doors. The sky had gotten lower and grayer while I was inside. Our breath made small clouds in the cold air. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, I looked toward the side of the building where the courtyard was. The bench was empty. But on the armrest of the bench where Ruth had been sitting, there was a folded piece of paper weighted down by a small flat stone. I don't know why I went to get it. My daughter called after me, confused. I walked over and picked it up. It had 4 lines on it, handwritten in neat, deliberate cursive. "You read every page. I knew you would." My first attorney told me that reading carefully was a skill, not a habit. I've been sharing that advice in this courtyard for 11 years. It's the least I owe the women who come after me. "Go home, Helen. You're going to be all right." There was no signature. I folded the note and put it in my coat pocket. My daughter came up beside me, looked at the empty bench, looked at me. "Who was that from?" "A woman I met this morning," I said. "She was sitting out here." "What did she say?" I thought about it. I thought about all the years I'd spent teaching my students that the most important skill I could give them wasn't grammar or analysis or how to structure an argument. It was attention. The willingness to slow down and look at what was actually in front of you, rather than what you expected to find. I'd taught that for 35 years. Today, for the first time in a long time, I'd used it for myself. She told me to trust what I already know, I said. My daughter looked at me for a moment. Then she took my arm. We walked to the car. The sky was gray, and the air smelled like rain coming, and the maple tree in the courtyard was almost bare now, just a few red leaves left, trembling but holding on. 10 days later, Dana presented Gerald's attorneys with a line-by-line comparison of both documents and a formal objection to every unauthorized alteration. Bosworth, much less smooth this time, agreed to revert all 4 changes. The pension clause disappeared. The rental property language was restored. The investment timeline went back to 90 days. Gerald signed the corrected agreement on a Wednesday. Dana sent me a photo of his signature on the final page. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put my phone down and called my daughter and told her to bring the baby over for dinner. Her sister-in-law was almost due now, and we'd finally agreed on the name. And I made pot roast and set the table with the good plates, the ones that had always been mine, that I was keeping, that were not in any document anywhere. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my kitchen and I took Ruth's note out of my coat pocket. I smoothed it on the table. "Go home, Helen. You're going to be all right." I thought about all the women who'd sat on that bench before me, all the women who'd walked out of that courthouse with documents they didn't fully understand, changes they didn't know to look for, agreements that cost them more than they ever realized until it was too late. I thought about what it takes to sit on a cold bench in October, year after year, watching the door, waiting for someone who needs to hear what you needed to hear, and giving it to them just like that, a stranger with a paper coffee cup and 11 years of practice and nothing to gain. And I thought, when I am 80, I want to be her. I want to be the woman on the bench. The woman. I folded the note back up. I put it in the kitchen drawer where I keep the things worth keeping. Outside, the first rain of November had started. I listened to it hit the window, steady and even. And I thought about tomorrow, and the day after, and the long, quiet rest of my life, which was still mine, fully, legally, entirely mine. Because one morning, I sat down next to the right person, and she told me something I already knew. Read every page. Trust what you know. You're going to be all right.